You're watching Free Speech TV.
From Pacifica, this is Democracy Now! We're broadcasting from Bolivia at the World People's Summit on Climate Change and Rights of Mother Earth.
We don't just want to come out with pamphlets against the Evo Morales government. But what we do is we take up the historical responsibility to show the world what we got right and the failures of this whole process.
As thousands attend the People's Climate Summit here in Bolivia, indigenous groups hold a counter meeting calling for an end to large-scale development projects, transnational corporations, and natural resource extraction on their territories. We'll speak to South African attorney Cormac Cullinan about the proposed Universal Declaration of Mother Earth Rights. And as Earth Day turns 40, we'll look at why many environmental and anti-nuclear groups oppose the forthcoming Senate climate change bill. All that and more coming up. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. We're broadcasting this week from Cochabamba, Bolivia, and a big shout out to our friends at Radio Gente here in Cochabamba that broadcast our headlines in Spanish every day. I'm Amy Goodman. 11 workers are missing and another 17 have been wounded after an explosion at an oil drilling platform off the Louisiana coast. Over 100 people were aboard the Deepwater Horizon when the blast occurred Tuesday night. Firefighters were still fighting the blaze as of early Thursday morning. 4 of the wounded are in critical condition. On Wednesday, Mary Landry of the U.S. Coast Guard said rescue boats are searching for the 11 missing workers.
We have no idea where the 11 people unaccounted for personnel are at this time, and we're going to continue to search.
The rig was under contract to the oil giant BP, which has come under scrutiny for major safety flaws in its U.S. operations. 15 people were killed and hundreds were injured in an explosion at a BP refinery in Texas in 2005. The company was fined $87 million last year for failing to make safety improvements at the refinery under a settlement with government regulators. Just last month, BP was fined $3 million for the safety flaws at a refinery in Ohio. BP has also been fined for a 2006 pipeline spill in Alaska. The Senate Agriculture Committee has advanced a proposal to increase oversight of the financial derivatives market. Republican Senator Charles Grassley of Iowa joined the committee's Democratic members to pass the measure by a vote of 13-8. Proposed by Democratic Senator Blanche Lincoln of Arkansas, the measure would ban Wall Street firms from acting as brokers for most forms of derivatives trades. The trades would also be conducted on an open exchange and subject to approval by a separate clearinghouse. Traders would also be required to raise money to cover unexpected losses in the event of a default. Critics have warned the measure could simply shift the risky trading from Wall Street to commercial banks. Congressional leaders say Senate debate on the overall financial regulation bill could begin next week. President Obama says he intends to choose a successor for the retiring Supreme Court Justice John Paul Stevens in the coming weeks. Obama discussed the Supreme Court search on Wednesday before a meeting with congressional leaders.
My hope is that we're going to be able to get a Supreme Court nominee confirmed in time for the next session. As Justice Stevens said, I think it's very important, particularly given the important cases that may be coming before the Supreme Court, that we get this process wrapped up so that a new justice can be seated and staffed and can work effectively with his or her colleagues in time for the fall session.
Seek a candidate who respects women's rights but won't make support for abortion, quote, a litmus test. Nearly all European flight routes have resumed after a week of closures due to volcanic ash from Iceland. Some flight bans remain in effect in areas of Norway and Sweden where the ash continues to linger. The closures mark the worst halt to civil aviation in Europe since World War II. Airlines lost at least $1.75 billion on over 100,000 canceled flights. U.S. The Pentagon has disavowed the comments of a top official who asserted that a U.S. attack on Iran is off the table in the near term. Undersecretary of Defense for Policy Michelle Flournoy made the statement Wednesday during a visit to Singapore. Later in the day, a Pentagon spokesperson said the U.S. maintains its policy that an attack on Iran would be a last resort. In Iraq, a court-martial has begun for a Navy SEAL accused of abusing an Iraqi prisoner last year. On Tuesday, the prisoner, Ahmed Hashim Abed, testified he was repeatedly beaten while hooded and having his hands tied behind his back. The accused, Julio Huertas, is the first of the 3 Navy SEALs to go on trial for the alleged abuse. In other testimony Wednesday, another Navy sailor testified he witnessed Abed being punched in the stomach. Abed was captured last year and accused of masterminding the 2004 attack that killed 4 Blackwater operatives in Fallujah. The U.S. has announced it will withdraw its military relief operation from Haiti on June 1st. Hundreds of U.S. forces have been inside Haiti since the January earthquake. Haitian President René Préval, meanwhile, announced Wednesday the creation of a commission to oversee Haiti's reconstruction.
With the promise of international help and the Haitian people, though they are still in tough times, we are working to create jobs. We are working to build homes. We are working for education.
Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has again rejected the U.S. call for a complete freeze to settlement building in occupied East Jerusalem. The Wall Street Journal reports Netanyahu relayed his stance to the White House over the weekend. The Palestinian Authority has conditioned a resumption of peace talks on an Israeli settlement freeze. Activists in Washington, D.C. are claiming victory after the City Council abandoned a proposal to attract the military contractor Northrop Grumman. The D.C. Council had previously floated a plan to offer Northrop some $25 million in tax subsidies and grants after the company announced it was looking for new headquarters. Peace activists, small businesses, and other groups responded by forming Sense, the coalition to end needless tax subsidies, which publicly lobbied against the move. A federal appeals court has suspended a ruling that blocked the congressional effort to defund the anti-poverty group ACORN. On Tuesday, the Second U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals in Manhattan froze a decision from last year that stripped ACORN of its federal funding, amounting to an unconstitutional bill of attainder. The suspension also applies to a follow-up ruling that ordered federal agencies to resume ACORN funding. It will stay in place until the Second Circuit rules on the government's appeal of the original decisions. ACORN attorneys say they're considering a Supreme Court appeal of their own. Speaking outside the courtroom, ACORN head Bertha Lewis said the funding cuts have left the group, quote, on life support. And activists in Arizona continue to hold protests against a measure that would force police officers to determine the immigration status of someone they suspect of being an undocumented immigrant. The state Senate has sent the measure to Republican Governor Jan Brewer following its approval earlier this week. Opponents call it the harshest anti-immigrant measure in the country and a license for racial profiling. Earlier this week, a group of 9 student activists were arrested after chaining themselves to the Arizona state legislature.
We are chained to the state capitol like these legislations have been changed to our people. We need to veto SB 1070. By passing SB 1070, the nation's most extremist legislation confirms Arizona as the engine for all anti-immigrant, anti-legislation.
Arizona Governor Brewer has until Saturday evening to sign the bill, issue a veto, or take no action and allow it to become law. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. We're broadcasting from Cochabamba, Bolivia, where the World People Summit on Climate Change and Rights of Mother Earth is taking place, here in the village of Tiquipaya. While 15,000 people have gathered here for the People Summit, millions of people across the globe are expected to take part in Earth Day events today, honoring the protection of the environment.